Show me the crypto. Show me the crypto. Show me the crypto.
In a world on the brink of disruption, two men will bring you clarity by interviewing some of the most intelligent and influential names in the blockchain world. Welcome to Show Me the Crypto with your hosts, Wade Patterson and Ulf Lonergan.
Well, hi there, and welcome to Show Me the Crypto. My name's Wade Patterson.
And I'm Ulf Lonergan.
We're a couple of friends from Canada who love learning about cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology, and we're happy you're along for the ride. Whether you're a crypto virgin or you know your way around the block, we hope our interviews with some of the most intelligent and influential people in the space help deliver you with value. And on this episode, we're joined by Tom Bilyeu, co-founder of billion-dollar brand Quest Nutrition and co-founder/host of Impact Theory. From growing up in Tacoma, Washington and working his first summer job at the age of 12 to building a unicorn business, millions have been inspired and empowered by Tom's ability to unlock their potential to make an impact in the world. Recently, Tom has expressed he feels a moral obligation to expose his audience to cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology, and on October 13th, Impact Theory will release its official Founders Key NFT, which promises to be a value-packed utility token. Tom, welcome to Show Me the Crypto.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, we're really stoked to have you on, and we're going to jump into the crypto side of things. But first off, so many people know your story. You have a massive audience, but for the few people who are maybe listening or watching this episode, do you mind just kind of breaking down your story and what has got you to this point in your career?
I don't mind at all. So I'll try to do it very quickly. I went to film school, graduated, thought I would get the 3-picture deal. I did not. I was crestfallen to realize that I didn't have talent and I didn't know how to break into the industry. And I believed that you were either born with talent or you weren't. And so realizing that I didn't have talent sort of sent me on a downward spiral. And I start reading about the brain and realize, wait a second, there's this saying called brain plasticity. Maybe you actually can get better. So I started focusing on that. I wrote a screenplay, got turned into a feature film. I was devastated with how poorly it turned out. And these two entrepreneurs that I knew said, look, you're coming to the world with your hand out. And if you want to control the art, you have to control the resources. So why don't you come with us and get rich? And I thought that sounded like a wonderful idea. I thought it would take 18 months. It took 15 years in multiple companies, but it did finally work. And we created a company together called Quest Nutrition that went from not existing to being valued at over $1 billion in 5 years. It's pretty crazy. And learned a lot from that, obviously transformed my life financially and gave me the ability to actually control the art now. And so along the way, I picked up a very intense why. So I always knew that I wanted to be in filmmaking, but I didn't have a big why driving me. I just loved storytelling. And so working in the inner cities a lot, end up developing just this absolute crushing need to help people that just hadn't gotten the right frame of reference. So intelligence is evenly distributed, but frame of reference is not. And since ultimately your frame of reference is basically your beliefs and your behaviors follow your beliefs, if you believe the wrong things, then you will act in a way that holds you back. And so trying to make sure that nobody gets to the age of 15 without encountering a growth mindset has become the mission of my life. I'm only interested in scale. So you will never hear me say, well, as long as I help one person, I'll be happy. And I'm actually glad that there are people like that. I'm just not like that.
Right.
So my wife and I play a game called No Bullshit, What Would It Take? And so we tried we basically started a university and told everybody, hey, I'll teach you everything I know about entrepreneurship. Because I'm like, whoa, these people are super intelligent. So they just need information. And so we tried that and came in early, stayed late, taught people how to build a competitive nutrition company if they wanted. Literally, I did not keep anything back. I gave them everything I had. And 2% of them used it to change their life forever. And that's super cool. And I love it. And I still get calls from people saying like, hey, you really changed my life. Like I could never have imagined that this was possible. But the 98% keeps me awake at night. And really looking at like the neuroscience of it led me to realize that this is it isn't impossible to do when you're older, but it's a lot harder. And if you can catch somebody in that age of imprinting, that 11 to 15-year-old range, that you can really do something. And so as we exited Quest and started Impact Theory with this whole idea of building a studio that, like Disney, would only tell one kind of story over and over and over from 1,000 different angles. But if Disney was trying to make the most magical place on earth, could we create the most empowering place on earth? And so that became the edict, through story, through video games, through all the pop culture elements, comic books, movies, TV, all of it. Could we actually entertain people first and foremost, but then inject in there a little bit of that mindset stuff that's changed my life? And so, yeah, that's the quick thumbnail sketch of how we've ended up here. And then NFTs end up being this incredible tool that I refer to as our moment of disruption. And so since the time we launched, we knew that to really compete with Disney, we would need a moment of disruption. And look, it's not going to happen overnight. I've always referred to this as my 70-year plan. They have a 90-year head start and billions of dollars in IP. So it's going to be a long journey, but at least we have this moment of disruption now that we can take advantage of to really get a foothold to start building some momentum.
One of the things I'm interested about, so the first time I came across your work was an interview with Neil Strauss. You were interviewing him.
Wow, that's OG. Yeah,
yeah. And there was two things that caught my attention. First off was the bio. It was so researched and detailed. The second were the quality of questions that you were asking. I think Neil pointed out on both. He said, wow, who wrote that bio? And you said, I did. You know, I like to do the research. It takes a lot of time, but it's important. And so was just this whole side of interviewing people and that is really blown up in terms of the content on YouTube and that kind of thing. Was that always kind of a passion of yours or something you thought you would be doing down the line?
Not always, no. I really saw social media before a lot of other entrepreneurs, and that's one of the ways that we blew Quest up and was doing the right thing before anybody else, and we reaped the rewards. And then I started to feel like, okay, I understood it at the beginning, but I haven't been keeping up with the pace of change. And we're moving into this area, which I did not have an impulse for, which was to be an influencer. There was nothing about that appealed to me. And so I didn't for a long time. And my marketing team was like, hey, we're really missing a trick here. And if you would step in front of the camera, I think that we could really do something awesome. And so finally, after years of being harangued and then just really looking at the numbers and saying, okay, the game has changed. I've been slow to recognize that the game has changed. And I recognize this as a tool. And so I stepped out in front of the camera. I did it for a while and then honestly thought about quitting because I wasn't getting enough out of it emotionally to justify the long-term investment from a business perspective. And my wife, who's now my co-founder here at Impact Theory, said, over my dead body, you are going to do this for a year. And if at the end of the year, we don't have anything to show for it, so be it. But you need to stick with it because this is just going to take time. But the company was so big and we were growing so fast. It was like, it just felt, like, is this the highest return? And thankfully, she pushed me because now it's like realizing the importance of community. Like things change so fast now. And I understood community from what I wanted to feel as the entrepreneur and the value that I wanted to deliver. I didn't think about it as a marketing vehicle. And so once I began to really understand it as a marketing vehicle and that things had changed and now just being a good person and putting out value as fast as you could, would create this totally new dynamic. So when we founded Impact Theory, it was like, hey, I know what this is now. But when I left Quest, we left everything. It was all in Quest name. And so we were starting over from scratch, but now I really knew what it was. And so was just like, all right, we're all in, we're going to go 1,000 miles an hour. And yeah, I mean, now I could give, like a doctoral dissertation on why one should build a community and how to do it. But at the time I didn't fully understand the power. And so I every now and then want to punch myself in the mouth for not starting, 3 years earlier, be much farther along now. But whatever, you just keep moving forward.
Well, regardless of if you started looking back, if you started when you thought was the ideal time or not, you've had some amazing interviews. I'm curious, what was your favorite interview to date? And what is your top wish list for an interview you've yet to have done?
So David Goggins changed my life. And that, I mean, yeah, he blew me away. So that'll always be sort of that lightning rod moment of like, whoa. And I remember, so the way that we found him was I was being pitched Jesse Itzler, who's also amazing, and had him on the show. And so I'm watching Jesse and I'm like, yeah, Jesse's a no-brainer. Let's do it for sure. But who's the SEAL? And at the time, he had not announced his name. So through the whole book, Jesse just refers to him as the SEAL, the SEAL, the SEAL. And I'm like, yo, we got to get this guy. Like, he's insane. And so we had stalked him probably for 6 months. And then he finally said who he was. And so we were like, boom, we got to get this guy. And so we were really early on the Goggins train, which is great. And yeah, that was huge. And then who do I wish I could interview? I'll also throw in Andrew Huberman as somebody that I thoroughly enjoy. I just think the parts of the brain that he looks at are utterly fascinating. And then Elon Musk would be huge. I would love to do that. Satoshi is my recent, like, oh God, that I get it. It's better that we don't know, but ooh, I would really like to know. So yeah, there's something so fascinating about that. I mean, honestly, I don't think we're living in a simulation, but the fact that Satoshi created this thing that I think will be absolutely revolutionary. It will change literally everything to like in ways that we can't understand. And if you talk to Robert Breedlove, who's also fantastic, you get really worried that like there will be actual bloodshed in all of this and that this isn't going to be like an easy transition. Mm-hmm. So the fact that this guy created something that would for sure make him the richest person on planet Earth at this point already. And then poof, they're just gone. Like, is this a simulation? And whoever coded it was like, yeah, this guy's got to go. And like, otherwise it won't work. Or is this person really that disciplined that they're just like, no, I did it. I put it out there and radio silence. Yeah. Incredible. Yeah. So that would be a fantasy. Although I know people would try to talk me out of it.
Well, I love the transition naturally touching on Satoshi before we get into crypto. But yeah, I'd love to know, you've told us a lot about your story, your background. What about getting into crypto? You know, when did you first learn about it? What was your initial impressions? What sparked your interest?
So in the beginning, it was like, like one of I think it was my chief marketing officer back at Quest was like, hey, there's this thing crypto. And this would have been probably 2014. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, oh, that's cool. But my thing was I had always my entire life focused on learning how to make money. And so investing money was never interesting to me. And so I'm sure he presented it as, oh, it's like this, digital money would have I don't remember the words he used, but like I watched a documentary on it and I remember thinking, oh, wow, that's cool. Like this idea of mining and like it produces these coins and they might be valuable. And I was like, oh, wow, it's really interesting. And, you hear the stories of the guy buys the pizza and then that ends up being like, $250 million for the pizza or whatever. And it was just like, oh yeah, that's cool. But my approach to wealth creation was always to build companies. So it just seemed like, oh, that's cool for other people. And to me, it was just like learning about a hedge fund or puts and calls and, the stock market. I just don't care. So I was like, whatever. And then probably about, I don't know, this must be a year ago now, one of my employees, a guy named David, who's becoming famous for this story, was like, hey, Tom, you really need to look at crypto. I'm like, David, that's investing. I don't care about investing. Let's build impact theory. Let's make it big. And he's like, would you ever consider giving me 50 grand and letting me invest it in crypto for you? And then like, I'll take a VIG or whatever. And I was like, dude, that doesn't make sense. Let's just put the 50 grand into the company, build impact theory. Like, let's, stay focused. And he kept bringing it up and I kept shutting him down. And finally I was like, David, for real. Like, I'm not interested. I don't invest and just isn't something I'm interested in. And he was like, Tom, 1%, just put 1% of your net worth into it. He's like, it's a hedge. It's a hedge. And I was like, really, I wasn't getting annoyed with him because this kid is so sharp, but it was like, how many times do I have to say like that? It's not that I think it's a bad idea. I'm not interested. And then NFTs came along, and I had seen NFTs in a different name, but same idea 6 years before. And I saw it and I was like, oh my God, that's going to change my business forever. I immediately understood the implications of digital scarcity. And so I was like, whoa, that's going to be a sea change for me. So NFTs get mentioned to me under that new name. And I'm not kidding. Within 72 hours, we've allocated millions of dollars in development. So I was like, that's that thing. Boom, I know what that is. Let's go. We're all in. I guess the tech is ready now. So we're off. And then to learn about, because anything like that, you need to be able to get to where you can think from first principles. And to think from first principles, you have to actually understand the technology. So now, because it's about building my business, I start looking at this thing called the blockchain. The blockchain then, of course, leads you to crypto. And all of a sudden, I find myself learning all these investment principles. And then I'm like, why didn't somebody tell me about this? This is the greatest thing of all time. And David is over in the corner like, just laughing his ass off because he'd been telling me for so long. And so I was like, yeah, David, look, you were right 100%. Thank you so much for putting this on my radar so that as I start learning about it, I'm like, okay, he's so primed me for this. And yeah, just immediately once I understand the technology, you form a thesis, and then I start investing based on the thesis and have gone very heavily now. It's my single biggest asset class except for real estate.
I'm curious that you mentioned that something of a different name 6 years ago or something along those lines. What was that? Was it blockchain related at all or something completely different?
No, it was literally NFTs, but he was calling them V-Atoms. Oh. And he had a company, I think that was their proprietary name, but it was exactly the same thing. Using blockchain, I don't remember what blockchain he referenced. I wouldn't have understood it back then.
Yeah.
But he was just like, it's digital scarcity. It can be traded. I could have it. He was like, I have this. He probably even called it a wallet. He was like, I have this wallet and look, like they're there, but I can send it to you. So he had me download an app and he sent it to me. And I'm like, whoa, that's so cool. I'm like, this is going to change my business. But it was like, you could sort of tell it was a little awkward. And so I was like, well, when this, gets ready, then we'll jump on board. But talk about another thing where it's like, I really wish I had, and the funny thing is because of that, now when I hear about technologies that are too early, I'm just like, I'm not letting go of that. Like I recognize where it's going to go and now I'm in it. I'm going to pay attention. So like, let me tell you one right now that I'm obsessed with. I'm not letting go of this. I think it's going to be massive is AR. AR and NFTs.
But AR and NFTs, because
that's what I'm saying. Like your NFTs, like this is what's going to happen. I'm going to have a giant mech walking behind me wherever I go. And if you have the Apple AR glasses, then you're going to see the big mech. Like when I think that life is going to be like that, dude, that's so great. You can walk into a business meeting with a mech behind you. Like, come on. So this is where this gets interesting. Or imagine coming to my house and I say, okay, anybody that has one of the Impact Theory founder keys, you don't see my house. You see some other like really cool thing that I've designed out, but only people that have the key can see it. Dude, the possibilities are endless. Like that's where like, I think people are going to mainstream adopt really fast, but that's the one where it just becomes a part of your everyday life. So
when we've talked about this before with a few guests, but I think a little bit of a different spin on it here is when you think about, so this is, I guess, VR really, but thinking about Ready Player One. Ready Player One, have you read the book?
Of course, and see the movie. Come on,
so good, so good. But it's commonly referenced when you start to kind of go down the path of the future and where we might all be and how we'll use technology. And so let's say the Ready Player One world. I mean, as a concept, VR was known, but you read the book, you're like, oh man, this is so cool, and I can see a lot of this being so real. How like humans basically live and work in VR, but what was missing from that whole idea in that future is NFTs and blockchain. And I think that, it was all owned, that whole VR space in Ready Player One is owned by a corporation. And that's where it's such a different future when you consider NFTs and where that will go, because now all of these things in this VR or AR space, they're not all owned by corporations. They're all self-owned, and there's true control for the owner of whatever it is we're really talking about. That's an NFT now, and it's just it's a much more wild future I think you can paint when you involve NFTs in the concept.
Yes, because you just made things economically viable at the level of the individual instead of just the level of the corporation. And, to think that I could have, my favorite artist make me a 1-of-1 Gundam robot that I can do what I want with. And that's where this gets really interesting. So that person now can make a living making those. I get to have something cool that really becomes a part of my identity. And now all these other economic economies are going to spring up, right? So even if you go to the Ready Player One idea, and it's like these planets and towns and nightclubs and all this stuff that exists within the virtual world, you don't have to buy materials. So now it's like you can have, so you're still beholden to the laws of the physics at the level of the computer, but the simulation is not beholden to the laws of physics. So the materials don't cost anymore, right? It just comes down to talent. And so do you have the talent, and are you willing to put in the time? And so then as if you start thinking about cross compatibility and you get into things like Unreal Engine or Unity, where it's like all of this stuff is pre-programmed. So now you're just pulling things off the shelf. So you can create, if you guys have ever seen video game speed level design, it's insane. They can make something photorealistic in like 26 minutes. And it's like gorgeous. And you can't believe that you can walk through like, this old barn in the middle of like some crazy forest. And you're like, that was a blank screen 26 minutes ago. And it's all because all of those elements are just plug and play. And so now it's just like everybody understands that knowledge stacks, right? But we went from the library at Alexandria to now the Unreal Engine libraries, where you can pull body movements, the physics, like actually how something interacts, grass, textures, skies. I mean, it's just like it gets so crazy so fast. And now all this stuff is stacking on top of itself. So, one person creates somebody walking, and then somebody else can just take that. And as long as they have a rigged item, you plug it in, and now that person can walk the same, and you don't have to redo it. Dude, it's so crazy. And yeah, this is where, as we get into how Ready Player One becomes real, it's like you just start getting a few technologies that start converging, and you get this idea of everyone can create, and it just goes bananas. Like there are times where if people really get me on a roll, I almost get jittery at how exciting the future is, because it's like, I don't think people understand how fast this is actually going to happen, and how personalized it's going to be. That's
already
what's so crazy.
The space moves so fast as it is. It's hard to keep up with. It's you really got to be on it.
No doubt.
Yeah.
So I want to jump into everything about the Founders Key NFT, but one thing I'm curious about first is, so you had a plan, like it sounds like you recognized this years ago, and then you mentioned within 72 hours of hearing the word or the acronym NFT, you were investing in it. What was it like as you kind of had your vision and building out that plan, seeing all of these other NFT drops, maybe some that were done very well, some that included utility, others that seemed more or less like a cash grab, maybe from a celebrity or something along those lines? Did that impact how your Founders Key NFT would actually become down the line?
Yeah, I mean, you can't help but be influenced by things that people do well and things that people do poorly. But to be honest, no one knows my community like I know my community. And so from that perspective, it was always, okay, because I've taken a very weird approach. Now, I think it's brilliant, and I think the history will vindicate me, but it is very odd, right? So number one rule in business is don't bifurcate your focus. So make sure you're laser targeted, you know exactly what you're trying to do. I mean, that's the advice I would give somebody. But when I decided to step in front of the camera, it was with an understanding that in building community of people that for years and years and years you add value, at some point they will be able to support you back, and they will feel that, whoa, this person has changed my life in some kind of way. Now, I cannot tell you how extraordinarily well that has already played out. And so in all of this contact with my community and being in it for so many years, it's like I knew some people want access to me. Some people want access to the education that I put out. Some people want to be in an exclusive club. Some people want access to the actual IP that we're creating. So the one that everybody already knows about is Neon Future. And it's something that Steve Aoki and I created together. And we're actually going to be doing volume 3 in 2022. And we'll do like a really cool NFT component to that. And the founder's key gets you access to things like that. And that's what some people are going to want, just either early access to a drop or being whitelisted, or if we do any discounts or freebies, like that's going to be the thing for them, but they get all of it. And so our thing is we think of it as a graduation system. So it's like you come for the matrix, but you stay for like actually putting it to use in your life, right? So we grab people with a film or a TV show or a comic book, but hopefully by the end you're in Impact Theory University and you're actually using this, to progress in your job or to improve your parenting skills or whatever. And that is really what I want to do. Because to me, the whole point of life is to figure out how much of your potential you can turn into usable skill set. And all the like sense of people feeling lost and not knowing what they're supposed to do with their life. I mean, that is a kind of human tragedy that is, it kind of goes undocumented. But when you think about the modern malaise of people feeling frustrated or hopeless or lost or whatever, 90% of that is just mindset. It's the way that you think. It's the way that you frame the world. And most people don't even realize they were making conscious choices in there. So we want to get people across that whole spectrum. And therefore, the key covers things across that whole spectrum.
Ulf, do you realize our audience has been either watching or listening to this episode for 20 minutes?
20 minutes? No, they should probably subscribe.
Yeah, they should subscribe. And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you comment and turn on notifications. And if you're listening to this podcast, especially if you're on Apple Podcasts, leave us a rating and a review.
We're also on Twitter, Instagram, and even TikTok. So go check out the episode description. You can find all that information below. And we have an update on the NFT, don't we?
That's right. We didn't previously mention this, but this NFT for OG supporter is a one of one. There will only be one of this kind ever minted, and we have a few surprises for the person who purchases it. The link is in the episode description.
And back to the episode.
So in terms of the details of the drop, because my understanding is there's some different tier levels to it, and this episode's coming out on Monday, October 11th. The drop, to my understanding, is Wednesday, October 13th. So do you mind explaining for our audience how it's going to work?
Yeah. So there are 3 tiers. So tier number 1 is the legendary tier, and that's what I'll call the full meal deal. It includes everything. There's only 2,700 of them, so it's very limited, but it gets them. Again, it's all done by category. So there's free access, exclusive access, early access. You've got discounts, token perks, and I think I'm forgetting one of the access types, but there's like 7 or 8 different categories. And then within each category, there's, 5 to 10 things. And so it's really this just massive smorgasbord. So that's the legendary tier, and that will start at 3 ETH, but it will go on a Dutch auction down to 1.5 ETH. At 1.5, it will stop. It will never be cheaper than that because the amount of value that we're putting into it is, quite frankly, magnitudes more than what we're charging for it. And so at some point, I would actually rather it not sell because I know that I'm going to need to support more people on it. So yeah, that won't drop below 1.5. The next tier is the heroic tier. That will start at 1.5 and go to 0.75 on Dutch auction. So everything cuts in half. Mm-hmm. And then what that is it's fewer categories and select instead of all. So if the legendary tier is everything, then this one is select items from fewer tiers, but it's a lot cheaper. And then the third one is the relentless tier. And this is the, people that are on the come up. This is for people that are really trying to pursue something. They don't have the ETH to get into one of the higher ones. And that one, so the heroic tier is 7,300. So tier 1 and tier 2 together are 10,000. Mm-hmm. And then tier 3 by itself is 10,000. But tier 3, which is very cheap, it starts at 0.1 and goes down to 0.05 on a Dutch auction. And that one, if we don't sell out in 24 hours, we will burn whatever doesn't sell. So our hope is that it does sell, because that will be the way for people down the road to get in, because we'll never do another founder's coin. So this is like the one shot for people to get in on that. And after that, it's all about people, buying from the community. Now, we will have other projects, but this will be the one sort of foundational thing. So the reason we called it a key is that it really unlocks the future of everything that impact theory is going to do. And there are varying degrees of access. So some categories, if you get exclusive access, it doesn't mean that it's free, right? So there are still going to be things in there where we're going to sell it, but you're going to be getting an unprecedented level of access. And then, of course, there are things that are on discount in the discount section, but we're selling only based on things that we know that we're going to put out in the next 18 to 24 months. But we already have a roadmap that goes out 5 years. And the reason that we're not selling against that is basically I want to surprise and delight people. I want to absolutely blow them away. I want them to be laughing, thinking it's absolutely ridiculous how little they paid for this. And then they see that we've got, 10x more than we've ever talked publicly about. Look, I'll just say I make a lot of bold statements whenever I talk about this. But the reality is I have the track record to back it up, and we have the financing in the company to pull it off. Even if 10 people buy it, those are going to be the most richly rewarded 10 people of all time, because we'll back the projects even if this doesn't sell. So I need people to understand what I'm like. And once they understand what I'm like, I know the next thing that I put on offer. And look, I think I have enough credibility that this will sell out, but I know I have to fight for every purchase, and I don't take that for granted. But as people watch me over the years execute on this, it will be crazy. When we launch something, it'll just be a no-brainer that people will go in because they know that I'm going to execute. And yeah, I'm betting my whole reputation on this. So it's like, you can imagine there is no universe in which I'm just like, oh, people aren't happy. Oh, well, like I'm going to be in there doing whatever it takes to make sure that people are it blows their hair back.
I think it's NFTs or the crypto space in general. People are crazy enough with how they throw around their money that believing in a project, backed by someone as credible as yourself, I think you'll probably do well. But I'm glad you explain it, because there is a real risk, as to the nature of as someone who's maybe considering like purchasing one of these NFTs for any project like this. You're now putting trust in the entity yourself who's delivering these NFTs and making these promises, because that's what a lot of what comes with this, right? Is promises for what's to come. So it's an interesting thing when you talk about the utilities of NFTs. You get beyond just, well, what is the digital file or the digital art or collectible or whatever it is that I'm getting for my purchase. When you get into utility, it is a bit of it's murky waters as far as that sort of what you get out of it, which I just think is it's an interesting thing that I'm also looking forward to seeing how it's approached in the future, because I feel like there will be certain just as cryptocurrency and the technology and the ways we can use it evolve, I feel like this sort of use case for NFTs will evolve, and there's going to be better solutions as well to sort of reduce the risk for the buyer, whatever those may be.
No doubt. And let me tell you right now that the SEC is making it hard for people like me to de-risk this, because I sought legal advice over a very aggressive de-risking plan for the buyer and was advised against it. But we will be working behind the scenes, hopefully, if the SEC hands down real regulation, that we can find ways to make sure that people don't have to sweat it. So that's, yeah.
But a good point that you had there is reputation, right? Like it would make no sense for you to do this as like a, a cash grab or something like that, because like you said, your reputation is on the line. One thing I'm curious about though, which is maybe something that is a little harder to control, is we've seen a lot of projects that have had NFT drops that ran into challenges, whether it was incredibly high gas fees or different things along those lines. What kind of steps are you taking to hopefully make that NFT drop as smooth as possible?
So we're using whitelist. We are doing pre-sale, and we have the Dutch auction. So between those, we hope that mitigates as much as possible the gas war. But we are also still exploring other things that we can do. Obviously, we have zero incentive to get people into a gas war. Yeah. So we want to avoid that if at all humanly possible. The problem is as you think through all the ways that you could do it, you realize when there's a limited supply and more people that want the supply, no matter where you create the bottleneck, you create a bottleneck. So we have to think through that. If we were in a position like where Mechaverse is, where they've got, 130,000 people in their Discord and only 10,000 units, then it's like, okay, when you have something like that, doing a raffle or something and just saying, cool, these are the people that won, that they're going to be people that will buy on the back end. I don't think that we certainly aren't anywhere near their Discord numbers. I will tell you that. So we're doing everything that we can to mitigate it. We know it's a problem. We're all collectors. None of us want to go through that, on our end either. We think that given the scope of where we're at, that we've been very proactive and that we think we'll be okay. But as we get closer, if we find that the Discord just starts jumping and, we're getting a lot more people and a lot more interest, then we'll put more things in place. We don't want a launch that, people are losing gas or they're spending ETH on, a whole ETH on gas. It's like, oh God, that would be horrendous. So we're very communicative. We'll talk to the community. We'll get their temperature. But I wouldn't be afraid to push the date if we had to. Like it all hell break loose and we're like, oh my God, this is now going to be a nightmare. We would work through that. So spiritually, we are here to solve any problems. I will just say that. Now, it's inevitable that I make mistakes, whether at the launch or in the future. And so, look, the community knows me. Many of them have been watching me now for, some 7 years if they found me back at Inside Quest. So they know I'll make good on it. And I just want people to understand, like, I'm in this for the long haul. So should we encounter any bumps in the road, trust me, we'll make up for it.
Speaking to other projects, are there any specific NFT projects or cryptocurrencies for that matter that you're a big fan of?
Yeah, massively. So I'm a collector by nature. So that was part of why I understood NFTs so well. I was like, oh my God. So you're saying I can collect things now virtually? Like that is way better. And I don't know about you guys. I didn't anticipate how quickly it would go, that I would rather have the virtual NFT version of something than the physical version. Yeah. I'm like, I can't believe how fast that happened. So, and especially when you look at where displaying is going to go in the future and you start thinking about AR and all that. So anyway, that's really happened for me. So projects that I absolutely love. I'm in the Bored Apes. That was like my first big purchase where I was like, whoa, we're at the point now where I could have bought a really nice Ferrari for what I have put into JPEGs. It's like so insane. Like you could not have convinced me. And the funny thing is, I'm like, I am so much more into all of my NFTs than I ever would have been into a Ferrari. It's literally hilarious. If you come to my house is nice and fancy, but my car is like this beater sitting out front. And it's like, what? And I'm like, I never drive. I take Uber everywhere. Cars don't make sense to me. They're a depreciating asset. I don't get it. Bored Apes, big fan of. I would love to at some point get a punk. I watch that floor a lot. I love Meebits. I think Meebits are way slept on. And I think that if Larva Labs comes out and does something, I think that one could take off. So I'm always looking to snipe something there. I'm super impressed with Cool Cats and what they've done community-wise. Genesis Kongs, I have to admit, that has my full attention now. I look away for 3 weeks while we're getting ready for the launch. And someone's like, yo, Kongs just passed Punks. And I was like, what? So yeah, learning about like their the banana token and stuff. The problem is, man, that's like the SEC just entered the chat. You know what I mean? So there's some like stuff like that where I'm like, oh God, I would love to do something like that, but no way. So we'll need some regulation to come down before impact theory starts doing that, but I would love to do it. What are some other projects? Well, crypto, the currencies themselves, I'm a total freak for Bitcoin and Ethereum. I'm a utility maxi. So I get Bitcoin, I get Ethereum. Obviously, I'm building on Ethereum. So that one holds a real special place in my heart. And then Link, Chainlink, I really understand that, why that's going to be useful. So those are the three that I've gone the hardest in. I have investments in others, but nothing that I consider serious.
Fair.
You were definitely in the past, I don't know if still currently you are or not, but a Vayner speaker. What do you think of how Gary Vaynerchuk's VeeFriends went?
I can't believe I didn't mention that one. So VeeFriends is the shit. I love Gary. Gary in real life is everything you hope he is. He is such a lovely human being. And he's the only person that will execute almost as well as me. So no, I love Gary. He's going to kill the game. There's no question about that. I'm in on VeeFriends. I have two. And yeah, let me tell you, if his price dipped enough, I would go snatch up more for sure. Like he is somebody I think anybody can be very confident that in the long run, he will do right by everybody in the community.
Would it be safe to assume that some of your inspiration for your NFT comes from Gary's approach to VeeFriends?
I think, yeah, I mean, for sure, there's no way that I wouldn't have been influenced by the way that he thinks about community, but the drop mechanic is very different. So I've taken a totally different approach. So Gary's created an IP, right? And that IP is VeeFriends. And then he made that the core of the entire company. So I've taken a totally different approach, which is my company has many tentacles into everything. It's got tentacles into right now, obviously content creation. We do unscripted, scripted. We have a university. We do comic books. We will eventually be doing gaming, AR, VR, like all this stuff. So I was like, there is no universe in which I create one piece of IP and tie everything to that. Right. So if you look at the map, you'll see there's an area, the utility map that we've created. There's an area for people that have the legendary tier that they get whitelisted onto our upcoming 10K plus PFP projects. And that's an easy way to think about it. They're not all technically PFP. And those are all like full blown universes unto themselves, right? So we have one that will drop. And it'll be so interesting. Part of me in the marketing, I'm like, no, it's okay. Doubt me. No, it's fine. doubt, because I know what's coming, right? Yeah. And so 3 weeks roughly after the sale of the founder's key is our first piece of IP. We've put so much time and energy into this IP. It's fucking crazy. I have a writing staff on it. I have art staff on it. We have on that one project, we've got 12 people working on it, maybe more. It's fucking crazy. I'm talking multiple countries. We've got people in Mexico. We've got people in Canada. We've got people in the US. It's going to be fucking incredible. We've got a 3-year plan for that project alone. So anyway, as people realize, like, wait a second, that's one of the 10. And then, of course, we'll be thoughtful not to put too many out and like we'll pace that cadence out right. But we think like Disney, right? So it's like, I'm not going to do a VeeFriends style drop because I need to have a Frozen. I need to have a Soul. I need to have, my direct to DVD stuff. It's like, you've got to have like all kinds of different stuff to build out that studio, gaming, the whole nine. So yeah, I'm not doing one universe and tapping out. It's like, we're building a whole library of IP.
Right.
And it's exciting hearing you talk about it. I mean, I was already pretty much sure I was going to go for one, but now it's like, okay, sold. I'm pretty sure I'm going to jump on that on Wednesday.
Please no gas wars.
Yeah, exactly.
We're trying, man. We are trying.
Yeah. One thing I'm interested about, I heard you on an interview talking about how you often anchor your why to a specific person. Yeah. So when it came to Quest Nutrition, it was your mom and your sister. I'm wondering, when it comes to crypto and blockchain and NFTs, is there a person you're kind of anchoring this to?
Of course. So it's a long story that I'll make very short. So when I was 18, I was trying to get into film school. I needed extra credit to do it. They sent me into the inner cities to basically tutor a kid for 8 weeks. And 8 weeks turned into 8.5 years with one kid. And I became the guardian of the court when he got taken away he was being abused. And so I helped him into the court system. It was like a whole fucking thing. I mean, it was this huge swath of my life. And that kid still to this day sits at the, center of my heart, and feeling like I was not able to save him from his zip code. And because I was young and stupid. And so I just didn't know. So all I knew was to show him that somebody loved him. And I would take him with me when I would go dream. So I was broke, but we would go see movies in Beverly Hills, right? Because the movie's the same price. So it's like, well, you might as well see it at the nicest theater you can. And so I used to, take him to really nice places to see movies and stuff. But I didn't have mindset back then. So I couldn't really help him in that way. And flash forward 15 years later, I have 3,000 employees, and 1,000 of them remind me of this kid that I showed him that somebody loved him, but I, in many ways, failed him. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm not failing again. And so there are, and I won't, rat them out by saying, these are the 5 people that I think of every day, but there are 5 people that I think of every day and that grew up in ways you can't imagine. I will run through a list of all true stories. One guy held a stepfather while he bled to death from a gunshot wound to the head. Another one, his sister was shot to death in the heart with an AK-47 in his front yard. Another hid under a car while his best friend lay bleeding to death in front of him while holding in his intestines because he'd been shot in the stomach with a shotgun. Just story after story after story like that. And these are incredible people. And you're like, fuck, like you just end up going down the wrong path when that's all you know. And your mom is telling you things like, people don't want people that look like you to succeed. It's like, if you believe that people don't want you to succeed, then you don't try. And if you don't try, then nothing is going to happen and you won't succeed. And hey, lo and behold, there you go. Just like she told you, nobody wants you to succeed. And when you start telling people, no, there were the most talented basketball players in the world were paid millions of dollars to stop Kobe Bryant from scoring. And yet he got so good that he scored 81 points in a single game. So there is a thing such as you just get so good at something, people can't stop you. They can't stop you, right? Good luck trying to stop Satoshi, right? Fuck you, world. Like, here it is. Good luck. But really let that sink in. So you can get so good at something that people cannot stop you. Not with violence, not with words. There's nothing. You've just become so good at that thing that you can beat everybody at it. Now, if you could get everyone in the world to believe that and then pick something that they really have a connection to that allows them to serve not only themselves, but other people, and said, now go become the best in the world at that. Now, most people will never become the best in the world, but I have a quote that will set you free. You can't make a racehorse out of a pig, but you can make a really fast pig. And my life is the answer to what does a really fast pig look like. So I'm not super smart. When I left for college, my own mother quietly assumed I was going to fail. My best friend said, oh yeah, I always assumed you were going to marshmallow your way through life. And when I asked my now father-in-law for his blessing to marry his daughter, he said no.
Wow.
So these are the people closest to me. They did not misidentify me. That's really where I was. But what I learned over time is that, oh, this is a mindset game, that you can actually get so good at something that people can't stop you. And so cool, I'm just going to go try to get that good. Now, I'm probably never going to be the best in the world at anything, but in becoming a fast pig, you can do extraordinary stuff. And so just getting people to understand that the game of maximizing your own potential is the most joyful thing you will ever do in your life. But you have to value yourself for the sincere pursuit of improvement, not becoming the best. Because if you're waiting with bated breath your whole life to see if you ever actually become the best, your life is going to be a misery. But if you love the process of getting better, but like in a real tangible way that actually helps people, right? If you do that, life will be a joy, no matter what.
I love it. I love the message. I really resonate with it. So thank you for sharing that.
Oh,
also,
sure.
I think if you don't have any tattoos, or if you do, you should add one, and it should be a really fast pig running, something like that. Maybe beating out a horse. That'd be great. But yeah, something I'd like to get your thoughts on is, in the world of crypto, there is this well-known theory about a 4-year cycle as far as like bull markets, bear markets, and coming all the way back through. Do you think that NFTs are relatively new? There hasn't really been a cycle in the NFT world just yet, at least not since their rise to popularity. Do you think NFTs are going to go through, are they in a bubble? Are NFT values and the way they're perceived going to have some burst in the near future of some kind?
All right. So if you'll grant me the permission to think out loud. So this isn't necessarily that I have a strong thesis, because we're all watching this happen in real time. But what I know about humanity tells me that the following is true. NFTs represent two things. One, cultural energy. And two, I don't have a single word for it. It's a battle for breaking out of this class structure that people can feel solidifying around them. And NFTs are what happens when you raise a generation of people that play video games and then thrust them into a world where they can own things that are assets that are highly volatile, meaning they could go way up. They could also go way down. But the whole point is that they can go way up. So they have found a highly volatile asset class, which is the Holy Grail. And it looks kind of like video game stuff. It's pictures of apes. It's 8-bit graphics of punks, right? This isn't like, think about what Warren Buffett looks at all day, right? Really think about that. That is the battleground. And so what you're having is the old generation, all they ever had was looking at spreadsheets and quarterly reports and reading really dry shit. You get to go on OpenSea and scroll through World of Women, cool drops from Wagmi-san, Oni Force, like all of that stuff. That's your version of looking for assets that you think are going to go up. That's a whole lot cooler. And we're now living in the one moment in history where that's possible. Now, once you understand that that's what this is, that always and forever, there have been people that gravitated towards the markets. They were looking for volatile asset classes so that they could get a return and beat inflation. So if we know that's the thing that people do, all I'm saying is, what do you think is going to happen when you raise a generation that are used to these like incredible graphics, all this interactivity? And now, hey, you can have asset classes that look like Bored Ape Yacht Club, or you can have asset classes that look like Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Aflac Insurance. You know what I mean? It's like, that is not going to be hard. Now, what we may find is that it attracts a different kind of investor like me, who never wanted to deal with investments. And it was not until investments look like a fucking Bored Ape that all of a sudden I'm like, yo, I want to get in on this. This is cool. I want to own this. Like, having other assets, not cool. A bar of gold, not cool. A Bored Ape, that's cool. Especially because I got to pick it and there's no other ape like it. It's mine. Like that. I put out a tweet the other day. People need to understand this. Art has always been important, but it's never been your identity in the way that it is today. Mm-hmm. I have an ape. I'd feel really weird selling it. Like that would be, it would almost be like breaking up with your girl and then you see her with somebody else and you're like, oh, that's fucking creepy. That's how I feel about my NFTs. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't ever flip. Of course I do. But it does mean that I have a very different relationship with it than any other asset class. And so when you think about, is this a bubble? It's cultural energy. Sometimes people will feel the energy of owning a punk, but now maybe that Kongs are here. Maybe the energy like slides away from punks a little bit, right? That's possible. We're definitely going to see moments where it's like, hey, it's summer and people are out having a good time, right? And so you'll see like, oh, we just know that there's a cyclical trend, hey, everybody save up for July because when people are going out that the numbers dip, or hey, everybody wants liquidity around Christmas. So that's when you get to snatch up your deals. There are going to be things like that because it's cultural energy. So there will be ebbs and flows. But once you understand this is a new asset class, and that a whole generation of people will grow up getting paid to play video games. Like it will be such a disconnect for them to think about traditional companies. Also, you're going to very rapidly find it'll be fun to play this clip back in 5 years. You're going to see a growing divide between like OG sort of Web 2 and Web 3 ethos, right? Of like control everything, top-down control. And then over here, DAOs, true decentralization. I work for myself. I never work for anybody else. Like, let me tell you, it is already getting harder to hire people because everybody's like, nah, I'll just work for myself. So it's like, whoo. And that's going to create a radically different dynamic because you can't build as big of things if you don't have a clear vision. Now, there might be a generation of people coming up that are like, yeah, no, I'm totally cool putting all the time and energy being the leader of this DAO and not, getting anything extra for it. But my gut is what you're going to see is things created by DAOs will be utterly fascinating, but they won't have the longevity of something where you've got a founder that's like ultra driven. They're in it. They're not going to quit under any circumstance. But that's my bias, right? Because that's what I am. So we'll see how it plays out. I am just utterly fascinated by the depth of what is happening and how surface everybody's keeping the conversation. Like if you talk about NFTs like they're JPEGs, I'm like, for fuck's sake. It's like, not only you should only be talking about metadata anyway, let's start there. And then if you can't get down to the layer of like what's really going on psychologically, then you're going to be very surprised by this. I live by a maxim. Don't think about things, think about the nature of things. Once you understand the nature of NFTs, the nature of decentralization, the nature of the blockchain, the nature of Web3, then you can begin to think from first principles and predict where this stuff is going. But until then, it will just all be confusing.
Yeah, some really good points there. One of the things that's a little bit troubling when it comes to NFTs, I found, is the scams and the sophistication of some of these scams, whether it's through Discord, somebody getting a DM from somebody who maybe they're using a JPEG, they don't actually own the ape, but they're using it as their photo, so it makes it look like a legit person, and they say there's some discount on something. It all looks pretty official. People click on it, and then they're asked for a MetaMask seed phrase. Maybe they're somewhat new to the crypto space, and boom, everything that they've owned in their Ethereum wallet is gone. For someone like you, who you've already got a community built, and probably a lot of those people will want to support you in this. So with that, some of them are going to be brand new to this process. You're also educating them how to create a MetaMask account and everything that goes along with that. What are you doing, or what do you feel is your responsibility in terms of doing your best to equip that community with the knowledge so hopefully they don't get scammed?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. Like, I think we all owe each other in this community to put that stuff out when we know that it's going on. Like, I saw a lot of people in the community sleuthing around every time somebody would say, hey, I got a spam NFT and I, tried to move it to another address and they swiped everything. And you'd see other people come in and go, if you follow the transactions, you see they must have given their seed phrase because it wasn't tied to the transferring of that object. So seeing the community gather around to really try to figure out what's going on, that's super powerful. Making sure that everybody's talking about things to do and not to do. Like, I was just my wife had a bunch of high-powered female CEOs over here yesterday, and I was giving them a tutorial on NFTs. And we got to MetaMask, and I was like, look, if anybody ever asks you for your seed phrase, I don't care if it's your mom. She's been body snatched. She's going to steal your shit. So like, under no circumstances, give that out. So even just like making sure that people know basic things like that. And we'll continue to put out content that are, the 101s, trying to onboard as many people into this ecosystem as possible. That's really important. And look, part of that level of sovereignty over your money, it's a double-edged sword. It's rad not to have to, convince my bank to do something on a weekend, right? But it's also a little scary to know that if I forget my seed phrase, that I'm out of luck. So, that's scary. And then like even yesterday, somebody, and they were obviously not trying to scam me because it's one of my wife's good friends, but she was like curious, knowing how important the seed phrase is. She was like, where do you keep yours? And I'm like, I'm not telling you that. So, I don't like that sense of danger. That like really does make me uneasy. It's trade-offs. It's trade-offs. You know what I mean? And the more you learn about it and understand how it actually works, the more confident you become.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think that's just a product of over time. I think these things will get better. Being early does come at a cost sometimes, that you've got to run with those risks and that type of thing. But I think a lot of people would agree. Like we had our last guest that we had on Show Me the Crypto was talking about, like that's a frightening day zero experience of, okay, write down this phrase, never lose it, never tell anyone, don't forget it, or else everything's gone. But if you give it to anyone, everything's gone. It's pretty daunting and intimidating, and see that possibly that's scaring some people away from the space.
Yeah. Oh, no doubt. No doubt. I remember going through the whole setup process and you're like, oh God, am I about to lose money? Like it's super nerve wracking. In fact, the first time when you go to connect your Coinbase account to your bank account and ask for your username and password. And I was like, get out of here. I am not giving you my username and password. You are out of your mind. So yeah, that was so jarring to me. I was just like, I couldn't fathom. Now I'm obviously way more casual about it, but in the beginning, every button you press is terrifying. You're like, if I show somebody my public address, are they going to be able to steal my shit? Like what's happening here? So yeah, just not knowing like which ones are safe, which ones are not. It is daunting, but once you're in, it's so easy.
Oh yeah. Tom, we're getting near the end of this, but before we get to our final section, one thing I wanted to get your thoughts on is we've touched on it a little bit here and there in the conversation, but I'd love to know what's the craziest future you can paint for all the many aspects and ways that NFTs will change the world.
Okay, so now you need to get down to the technology. Once you get to the technology and you understand what this is doing, it's allowing you as a company to verify that somebody has a real version of your thing. So take our impact theory founders key, right? So now that we've gotten over the hurdle of it can't be faked, now the like crazy punchline for me, because there's Ready Player One, right? But now let's get to the thing that's actually going to make a true world of difference. When we do the impact theory founders key sale, we'll take the initial economics there and we expect to do very well. However, I'm going to support it for the next 30 years. And the community captures 90% of the economics long tail. When has that ever happened before? And now if I start doing it, other companies have to match me. And so now all of a sudden you're getting paid to play video games. You can sell the things you earn in your video games, things you're doing for fun. You love impact theory anyway, but now you have one of the founders keys and you can capture the long tail value of that I'm over here working my ass off to create value for you. Now it's a selfish thing. And I want people to get very comfortable with that because the only thing you can ever trust any human to do is be selfish. So if you have to trust me to be altruistic, that's a dicey place to be, right? But if you know that our selfish desires are aligned, then it feels good. I need a thriving community to pull off what I'm trying to do, right? To break this tie between your zip code and your future success, I must have a thriving community because I need to be able to sway pop culture. So that means I have to convince the Netflix of the world to show my movies and my TV shows. And I'm going to have to build a whole gaming studio. I mean, this is going to be a massive undertaking. And if I don't have this massive army behind me, supporting me, buying the things that I'm creating, all of that stuff, I'm never going to be able to get where I want to go. So I must, like every time I look at, because my team will evaluate all the things that I put into it. And they're like, dude, you're really there's a lot of time. And you're saying that you're going to do this for years and years and years. And look, we will sunset things if they're not working. We'll give people plenty of notice. What we're selling against, we will support for at least 3 years as is. So nobody has to worry that you're going to get rugged. But eventually we'll find some things work, some don't. Like this one's becoming too taxing, whatever. We'll sunset that. We'll bring something else in of equal or greater value. People can trust that I'm going to fucking flood this thing with value. But when you get into the realization that companies now are going to win or lose based on whether or not they add value to their community in a tangible way, that changes everything, man. It's like, once you understand, wait, I'm going to get paid to play video games? That it's like, huh? And there are people in the Philippines that make more playing Axie Infinity than make farming. And then if you really want to get crazy, what happens then? When people can make more playing a video game than they can farming, how do you get people to farm? So it is a world that no matter what prediction I give you, it's going to be way crazier than you can imagine. The fact that Axie Infinity is already generating more revenue than Fortnite, that's crazy. Crazy. Yeah, it's insane. And then what happens culturally when a kid grows up having been paid his whole life to play video games, and now like, oh, you want me to go to school? No, I'm going to need to be compensated for that. So there's going to be good things, there's going to be bad things, but it's going to force people to think about economics in a way that they never have, to take control of their life, to realize that they can monetize a lot of things. Like, I don't think people are going to give up their data real easy anymore, because somebody's going to come out and say, whoa, don't give it to them. I will monetize it for you. And now you capture the economics. It's going to get crazy, but it comes down to that single sentence. Communities are now going to capture some massive amount of the long tail value of the companies that they support. That's insane.
Do you anticipate long-term you'll make more off of the initial drop versus, and we haven't even talked about royalties or secondary sales, or where do you think long-term, which one will be greater?
Well, long-term, what'll be greater are the secondary products that we do around it, right? So you've got the founder's key, but then you've got Neon Future, for instance, right? And so because they get different amounts of access to this that other people will want if we do a good job of making this brand matter. So by making this brand matter, the value of this goes up. They're capturing the long tail value here. I'm capturing the economics here again, but then this community gets the long tail value of that. But it's the interaction of all the other things that you create. Some you're selling. Remember, they're getting early access, but not free access. So you create this community, which becomes your greatest marketing vehicle of all time. You're able to broadcast, get things out. They're capturing value. They're excited. They are incentivized to go make sure that all these things do well, because then that makes their foundational piece worth more. And so you get into this incredibly virtuous cycle where the most selfish thing they can do, right, get everybody to believe in that project, is the thing that I most want them to do.
Right.
And the most selfish thing I can do is make sure that they reap value for doing that, right? So me being selfish, make sure they get value. Them being selfish, make sure that value comes back to me, even though that's not what they're trying to do, but that's what they do unintentionally. And it's that virtuous cycle where I'm actually just trying to be selfish. They're actually just trying to be selfish. And here we are, because we've set things up well, where we're reinforcing each other.
Yeah, makes so much sense. Tom, this has been one of our favorite interviews for sure. Just such a good conversation. We like to end every episode of Show Me the Crypto the same way, with the same 3-question segment. We call it You Had Me at Crypto. Alf's going to ask you those questions.
All right, let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. First question. Who's your favorite person to follow in the crypto space?
Raoul Paul.
Nice.
Good answer.
Yeah,
good answer.
Very good one. All right. Second question. What will the price of Bitcoin be 10 years from now?
Do you want to know what I secretly say to myself? Even though I am not good at predicting price. I want to be very clear. So this is
we're talking a decade out.
This is just for fun.
This is only meant to indicate how psychotic I am about it. I think in 10 years, it's at $1 million.
Nice. That's it. That's not that crazy. That's a popular answer. Probably the most popular answer.
Yeah.
I literally
maybe we're all crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, that could be. Whenever I look at my stash, I'm like, multiply it by $1 million. That's what it really is. So delusional. I love it.
Nice. All right. The third question. What's the most underrated coin or project in crypto?
Bitcoin.
Awesome.
Nice. Love it.
That's starting to get savaged with like people looking for those quick gains.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see that thesis play out long term, because it's losing some of the sexy factor. Right. Is why I say that it's undervalued.
Somebody called Bitcoin a boomer coin. I was just like, that just seems crazy to me.
Think about how fast that happens. I have a whole thesis around what I call the 6-year cycle. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, I love the boomer coin.
Tom, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Show Me the Crypto.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to Show Me the Crypto. Please make sure to subscribe as well as rate and review this podcast.